In this tutorial we're going to cover how you can blend seamlessly from the simulation back into animation, and we can do this by using the transition event and the active animation event. So with this tutorial we're going to start with a few things loaded. So first of all, let's go ahead and load that scene up. So we go File, Open Scene, and we start with Tutorial 8, Car Hit Begin. So let's first of all talk about the things that are in this scene. So first of all, there is a character here. He has some animation loaded onto him already, and then we take him into the simulation at this point, and he has a couple of behaviors applied to him. There are two props in the scene. First one is the car itself, as you can see, made up of a very simple selection of collision objects, and then the other prop is the actual motion for the car, which this car is then attached to using a constraint. So let's simulate and see what we have first of all. So as you can see, while the character is grey, he's being driven by the animation, and then as he goes into this point here, he's being driven by the behaviours to tuck himself up using body fetal, and then lands down onto the ground. We want to enhance this now so that the character, rather than just falling down, is going to blend smoothly back into an animation. So first of all, we need to load in an animation. So we go Character, Import, and I want to use Jump with Stumble. In the Import dialogues, I'm going to select from the hips. In the Auto Motion Transfer section, make sure it's turned on, click on the Browse, and use Audio Motion to Character. Now this folder is from the install of Endorphin in Resources, Characters, Custom Characters. So I use Audio Motion 2, click OK, turn off the Create Simulation Events, and click OK. Now that's going to load the motion in and dynamically transfer that motion onto our simulation character in the scene. So now that we've got the motion in, we need to position it in the right place and the right time. So we've got our event here. First of all, I'm going to roughly move it into place by changing the time here, and as you can see, while I'm doing this, the visualization of this animation is changing as well to show me what frame I'm actually looking at. So here I want to change it so that we're matching what our character is doing, so we want him to have a foot down onto the ground. So as well as just moving it in the timeline here, I can also modify it by changing the actual spinner here, and as you can see, the graphic is going to give me an update of that as well. So now we've got it the right time, we need to get it into the right place as well. So I can use the manipulation tools to just rotate it round and then move it into the right place as well. So now we've got it all lined up in time and in space, we need to actually blend into this animation. So what we do now is use a transition event. So I right click on the timeline and go Create Transition Event. And as you can see now, this gives us an event which stretches out the period of time from full simulation to full animation. And this being an event like any other, you can change the duration of it, move it to be wherever you want it to be within the timeline. So here I want the character to start to blend at frame 90 and then finish blending around 112 here. So one thing we also need to do is modify the amount of time that this imported animation is going to affect the character, because at the moment you can see that it's actually going into this first part of the non-simulation, so that's actually going to drive the character there as well as at the end. So we need to grab the beginning of the event, and as you can see here, pull it over to the transition. So this grayed out period here, this sort of faded green, represents that the animation is still there, but we're just not going to use it for this animation. So once we've set up all of that, we can now simulate, and the character is going to blend into that animation. So as you can see, although that looks like a pretty smooth looking blend, we can improve that now by using the active animation. This will allow us to have the character start to get into the pose of the animation even before we start the transition. So to do this, we need to do a couple of things on the timeline. First of all, we need to select our animation event and move it so it's actually going to begin before the transition for a certain period of time here, and then what I'm going to do is actually change to be active as well as passive. So that means that while it's within the simulation it's going to affect the character, but then also start to affect the character when it goes into the animation as well. So there are a couple of parameters here that we can modify for the active part of the animation. Just to talk about those quickly, the strength will actually give the character a certain amount of muscle strength to be able to get into the pose on each individual frame. And then a blend period is just a linear blend to ramp up to that maximum strength. So for this example I'm going to put in a couple of numbers here. 0.8 for the strength, and then 0.15 for the blend period. So now if we play the animation again, you'll see that we get a much smoother blend. As he's still within the simulation, he starts to get into the pose of the animation, and then the transition simply just slots him into place. So the nice thing about these animations being independent of the character, you can load in as many as you want and position them all in place, and then try out lots of different endings and see what looks best. So for this example here we're going to load in another animation and then position that, and then we can very easily just switch between the two and see what animation looks best. So to load in more animations, we again just select the character, go to import, and we're going to use this jump off box. So just the same as before, select the hips, turn off create simulation event. The character will already be set up in the auto motion transfer section, so we leave that all as default, click OK. And that's going to load our motion in again, so we get a separate event. So now we have another animation here. So again we do a roughly move into place. Scrub the timeline for a good point to blend, and as you can see this animation is too far back, so I can select it and using the spinner get it into the right place. So to make things clearer I'm going to turn off the visualization of this other animation, so now I can concentrate on this one. Swing him around so that he's facing pretty much in the right angle. Position him into place. Now as you can see I'm lining up the feet here because it's the feet that are making contact. If it was his hands holding onto something, then I would be positioning the hands into the right place. So again we need to change it so that the animation is not going to affect the first part, but then have this blend period here at the beginning where we're going to use the active part of the animation, which I'll set up here. Use just the same settings as before. And now I can easily just turn off this animation, and the character is going to blend into that animation rather than the one before. So as you can see, it's very quick and very easy to have characters blending in and out of animations, and indeed trying out different endings and see what looks best.